Just because you did it once and now you find yourself working with people that you might not have the most joy working with, it's okay to switch.
Oof. Tell them again.
I'm just saying, it's okay to change, because I think that, like, so, and I just want to share a story here, because I did this. When we first get in, I worked with young professionals, high income earners, and they have their own set of problems that you kind of deal with repeatedly. And I did that, and we grew the business pretty well. We brought in 17 clients under that framework. And then I found myself, working with the clients, and then I just didn't have the same amount of joy that I used to have working with them. And in this time, I had a few retiree clients that I sincerely like working with more. And it wasn't because of the assets or anything like that. I just had a little more joy working with that client. And so now I was faced with a real thing. Do I change my framework and start to look at different things on how to serve a different group of people, even though I already have my business serving these people?
Yeah.
And having to make that choice, because you alluded to it when you said you're working with business owners, equity compensation, this and that. And so I think this is like a natural progression because I think when we're first making this decision, and depending on where you are in your continuum of being an advisor, you may not know who you like working with.
Correct.
You may not know who you connect with the best, and you may not even understand the framework that you have. Because when I first came in, I was talking to another advisor about this before we even started this. I was like, this is like my 6th fee iteration that I've had in the 7 years that we've been open. You know what I mean? So things change, and I think you have to be nimble enough to make those changes and listen to, not only your business, but to yourself about who you like to work with.
Welcome back to another episode of The Advisor Journey. I'm your host, Desarte Yarnway, and this is a very, very special episode to me. First and foremost, the guy sitting across from me is like a brother. We've built businesses together. We've coached each other in financial advice and scaling practices, helping other advisors, and just trying to be better human beings. Without further ado, Emlyn, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me back. I'm excited to be here to catch up with my brother and have everybody get to see it.
You've been on the podcast before. You know how this goes. It's a little different looking, but it's the same human advisor approach. I wanted you to look into the camera, just introduce yourself to the people that might be watching and may not have seen some of your previous episodes.
Absolutely. Okay, Emlyn Miles Mattingley, financial advisor, been doing this for a few years, opened our firm in 2017 and focusing now on retirement planning. Done a lot of different things, from podcasting to YouTube to a lot of different things that we've done. Started the internship program, just love the industry and love giving back. So here we are.
Absolutely. In addition to that, he's being modest. In addition to that, we started the Honest Advisor Network that was acquired by Wealth Tinder. And we just do stuff together. Our families are like one. So Emlyn, it's great to have you in the building with me today. One of the things that I wanted to talk about, or the thing that I wanted to talk to you about today, was just experiments in advisor marketing. Everyone knows if you can't get butts in the seats, you don't have a business, right? And I think that's the one thing that advisors struggle with the most. It's getting outside of their comfort zones, number one. It's finding the thing that they could do consistently over time, number two. And number three, it's about like doing that and believing and trusting the process, right? So I just wanted you to really walk us through your experiments in marketing, starting when we first met. I think this might have been like 2018 or 19. To where you are today and how that's impacted your business. So I'll let you have the floor.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I think that like when it comes to marketing, especially like as an advisor, right? So you start your firm and you come out and now you're trying to go find your target group of people that you want to reach. And let's be honest, when you're in the first beginning part, you're taking, the target market is someone that has a pulse. Can they fog a wind?
Can you breathe?
Right? Yeah. Can you breathe? We're going to take you in. But what that does is when you set that up, one thing I used to always say is either you can either drive your business or you can ride your business, right? And what I mean by that is when you drive your business, you know exactly what you're trying to do, who you're trying to reach, how you're going to reach them, and everything that goes along with that. When you're riding your business, you start and try to find anybody that has a pulse. And now you've gathered, you may have gotten a few clients, but you've gotten one client that may be in his 20s. You got another client, they may be in their 40s. You got another client that may be retired. And so now in your business, you are riding the wave of whatever comes to you, right? So you don't have like a it just makes things kind of hard. And so what I seen over the time that I was, starting my firm and the marketing aspects that I was trying to do is we started in social media because everybody has to use social media, right? You just got to, that's the only way you can find business, allegedly. And so when you get into the social media thing, where do you start? Do you do Instagram? Do you do LinkedIn? Do you do Facebook? That's where the old people are. So you don't want to do Facebook, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have all these different things. And so I think the biggest thing is, one, we look at all the marketing avenues, right? Whether it's going to be one of those social media platforms. But the biggest problem I began to have when I was doing that is, how do I track where the people are coming from? Right. And so if someone's sending me a DM, okay, so I got a DM on Facebook, and now I got to go check the DMs on Instagram. And then, now I'm doing TikTok too, because that's where advisors need to be, on TikTok. So I'm trying to manage, and I'm spending more time trying to look at the social medias and where they're coming from than I'm ever spending with actual clients.
Right.
And so that went on for years. Like that went on for, and I think a lot of times advisors won't say that, like, how much business is actually coming from this. And it's not so much that you're doing anything wrong, it's that I think you're trying to do everything and not becoming good at one thing.
Yeah.
And so that's where I found myself over the years, like, and don't get me wrong, like, I did get business from, different avenues or different social media platforms, but it wasn't a repeatable thing.
You can't create your marketing flywheel if you don't know where you're going or who you're serving. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I think that that's one of the things that advisors struggle with. First of all, thank you for being vulnerable with us, because, you and I are in the fire together. One of my football coaches used to say, like, these are the people that are in the foxhole with you. And we were at that same place, same time, doing the same thing. And I can resonate with that frustration that you have when you're doing everything. You feel like you're working, but nothing is working. So there's an advisor right now that feels like they're working, but nothing's working yet, right? And your remedy for that has always been being curious, but also being hyper-focused and doing one thing that could yield the results that you want. Now, the reason I like doing podcasts with you, Emlyn, is because you pretty much give me the whole episode in 2 minutes, right? Like, you're going to outline all these talking points that we can kind of go through to build this episode. And I want to just start at the beginning. You mentioned this sort of analogy of writing your business and driving your business, right? Which I think is phenomenal. For the advisor that is preparing to grow and scale their business in 2026, how do you drive your business, right? Because coincidentally enough, my wife's New Jersey driver's license just expired. So she's at the DMV right now, back home, and she's getting a new license. Part of that whole process is that she has to take the test over again. When you take the test, typically, if you don't already know how to drive, you go to driver's school or whatever, and then you get your license, right? There are steps that an advisor has to go through to figure out how to drive their business. Largely, most advisors get into the game and they haven't even thought of how they're going to drive their business to the scale or to the point where they feel like, I've done it, I'm comfortable here, right? So could you outline those steps and what an advisor should be thinking about so they're able to drive? And then we'll talk about sort of these marketing experiments that you've had over time.
Yeah, and I mean, I think and that's a great question. When I think about that, right, the first thing that you want to do, and I think, I don't think I'm going to say anything that people are like, oh my God, I didn't know that. But I think really identifying that target market, right? And it's something that you hear all the time. But do we really identify it? Do we really spend the time? And lastly, do we identify it? Are we spending time there? And are we willing to tell people no that aren't in our target market? The last piece is the piece that really is difficult, right? Because when you're starting out and you're trying to, and not even when you're starting out, just when you want to grow, right? You want to be able to bring everybody in. But sticking to your guns about who you're going to try to market to, then how you're going to market to them is so important. Because if you don't get that established and stick to your guns stick to who you want to work with, to your client avatar, if you will, you find yourself once again riding that business. And I think one of the things that you want to do is identify who you like to work with. I think that there's nothing worse than being an advisor and going to work with someone that you really don't enjoy working with. We've had this conversation, right? And if you can identify that person that you like to work with, like what types of things do they like to do? Are they people that are like you? Is this your group of people? Are they, I find myself talking to a lot of athletes. I find myself talking to a lot of people that have families. I find myself talking to a lot of people that enjoy doing different things that I like to do. And one of the things that I did when I started that was to get there is I had to write everything down. You really have to take time to plan out who your client is going to be. And it's hard, right? Because essentially you're eventually, in the beginning, you're going to want to go, I want to go get the highest value client, right? The client that's going to bring the most revenue in. And that's great, but you have to be able to match that with your skill set and who you like to work with. And once you are able to do that, now we know who we want to work with. Now we have to find out, where are these people at, right? Are they on all social media platforms? All of us have a social, and I'm using social media because that's a big avenue for us in our business. But how do I meet these people where they are? And so once you know who it is, right? If we're talking about young families, talking family in their early 40s, whatnot, with young children, where are they spending their time? And how do I get myself in that place where they're spending time with a plan, talking about things that they're interested in? And going through that process takes a little longer than people usually give credit to. I think really having a defined target market and understanding that market, because to have that defined target market, you not only have to have that client avatar, but you have to understand what their needs are. Now that we're working with just retirees, right? When someone comes in and they're this age, right? Someone comes in and they're 60, and we know that they're already retired. They're living off some type of income, usually their savings. That 5-year planning period is a big deal from 60 to 65. I know that because that's who I work with. So when they come in, I already know that these are the problems that they're going to run into. And I did that because I was able to spent the time developing that client avatar, understanding what their problems were, and then ultimately finding out where they are. Most of them are on YouTube, 55 years old, 55 years and older. YouTube's the number one search engine, right? You know what I mean? That's what they're doing. So that's kind of like where I start at. And I think the start is so important. And I don't think we spend enough time really, really dialing that in. And if you spend that time dialing it in, it's so much easier to find the people that you're looking for when you do that.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned this because I was talking to another advisor on the phone yesterday. He just got promoted from being a analyst at his firm to being client facing. And we, for some of us that's gone the old school route of getting licensed and then going to the brokerage or whatever firm you're at, that's a big switch because you're used to doing paperwork and being somebody's coffee boy maybe, right? And now you have to actually facilitate these conversations. So he asked me, he said, hey, Sarte, how do I grow my business, essentially is what he was asking, in so many words, but not that. Didn't want to identify how hard it was to build a book of business, but he had all the confidence in the world. You know how that is. I'm young, I'm kind of naive. I don't know what I'm doing, but I think I could do it. And I gave him a framework. I said, you have to think about the who, the why, the what, and then the how. You know what I mean? So if you first identify the who, like who do I want to serve, right? I told him for me, my practice bounced around from business owners or people that were getting, paid in equity. The why, because they have problems that if I can master these specific problems, I can wash, rinse, and repeat to the next client or the next business owner, right? These are going to be equity compensation issues. These are going to be, taxes largely for business owners and how to manage cash flow. But it's pretty simple. There's just a few number of things that all of these people are going to have, with the exception of a couple specific cases. The what, like what product and services do we offer, right? That's when you can go to the shelf and say, hey, I'm going to do estate planning as well, right? Investment management, financial planning, tax planning, whatever it is. And that's how we help them solve these problems. And then it's like how do I get them? How do I put the butts in the seats so I can grow my business efficiently? So for the advisor that's looking and trying to figure out how to drive their business, that's a simple framework that you can go through at the end of this year to say like, hey, let me get really laser focused to figure out, who am I trying to serve, right? Why am I trying to serve them? How can they benefit from my services? What do I do to solve their problems, and how to get them in the seats, how to get them acquired and to be officially paying clients of my business. What's your take on that?
I think that once and so let me rephrase or make sure I'm answering the right question. How do you get that person?
No, what do you think about that framework?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that you got to do.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the, it's not the fun thing to do. That's the thing where like, you're in your notebook writing stuff down. And I've done this more than once. So I'm going to say this. I'll say this just so you know. Just because you did it once and now you find yourself working with people that you might not have the most joy working with, it's okay to switch.
Oof. Tell them again.
I'm just saying it's okay to change, because I think that, like, so, and I just want to share a story here, because I did this. And so when we first get in, I worked with young professionals, high income earners, you know, and they have their own set of problems that you know, kind of deal with repeatedly. And I did that, and we grew the business pretty well. I thought, you know, the business did well. We brought in 17 clients under that framework, if you will. And then I found myself, you know, working with the clients, and then I just didn't have the same amount of joy that I used to have working with them. And in this time, I had a few retiree clients that I you know, I sincerely like working with more. And it wasn't because of the assets or anything like that. I just had a little more joy working with that client. And so now I was faced with a real thing. Do I change my framework and start to look at different things on how to serve a different group of people, even though I already have my business serving these people?
Yeah.
And having to make that choice, because you alluded to it when you said you're working with business owners, equity compensation, this and that. And so I think this is like a natural progression because I think when we're first making this decision, and depending on where you are in your continuum of being an advisor, you may not know who you like working with.
Correct.
You may not know who you connect with the best, or what, you know, and you may not even understand the framework that you have. Because when I first came in, I was talking to another advisor about this before we even started this. I was like, this is like my 6th fee iteration that I've had in the 7 years that we've been open. You know what I mean? So things change, and I think you have to be nimble enough to make those changes and listen to, you know, not only your business, but to yourself about who you like to work with. But all under the guise through the framework, right? The framework that you build within your firm is super important. And if you've done a good job doing the framework, you should be able to adjust that framework to work with whoever you want. Now, I know I didn't completely answer your question, but I feel like that's kind of where I think a lot of advisors get hung up, because you build this business one way and then you fall out of love with it, or you find yourself, as I said earlier, writing the business because you had to take anything that came in at the time, and now it's grown and taking you on a ride somewhere you really didn't want to be.
Yeah, we got to reroute. Something personally that I've been, you know, experimenting with is like another framework we can say, or an acronym. So on how I live my life, right? And I call it PMG. So it's pray, move, and gratitude, right? I'm showing gratitude. So lately, a lot of the things that I've been showing gratitude for have been my problems. Like, you know, I'm like blessed to have these problems that I have, you know? So I'm looking at these problem sets, if you will, in my, you know, personal life, in my fitness life, in my professional life, right? And I think for an advisor to drive their business, the problem they have to first solve, if we're using that same sort of line of thinking, is they have to solve the first problem of like, who do they do their best work for? And how does that impact their business? And that problem can take years, right? It can take months. It can take years, right? But a lot of advisors struggle with solving that problem because they're impatient, right? They don't have a plan at all. They're riding the business, as you said, or they don't have any additional resources, or people like you and I had, like a support system to help them navigate the problem set of who they need to work with, right? So, you know, as I think about, you know, my life and that pray, move, gratitude, I'm looking at problems like, I'm grateful for this problem because on the other side of that, I'm going to have X amount of growth, right? So for the advisor that's listening, the first problem that you have to solve is the problem set of like, who do I do my best work for? And how does that scale my business? What material impact does that have for my business? Now, when I watch you going through sort of the different experiments, I can see that you've solved that problem over time, right? So take us on that journey of saying, hey, it's 2019, we just met, right? You got Gen X. Well, what were you doing? You mentioned it briefly, young professionals, but timestamp these years and talk to us about how you solved that problem, who I'm working with, and what that has meant for your business and its growth.
Absolutely. So we'll start right there in 2009 when I started my first podcast with the help of
19?
Yeah, 2019 when we started it. So we met in 18.
Yep.
I was on yours in 18. Then I started mine in 19. So anyhow, just to get the timeline. So when I started in 19, I was just happy to be here, right? Just happy to give my ticket punch and let's get going. And so we start with the business. And I'm trying to work with young professionals. I've seen this in my office the other day. I was at home and I had one of my old little laminated sheets with my services that I had. And I mean, it was, I was just happy to be there. Right. So anybody that came in, like I was saying before, yeah, come on in. We'll take care of you. Well, I thought you need to do this, or I don't have a retirement account, or I don't have this, or I don't have that. And we're just working with them. And so I had so much joy just being able to provide financial advice for people at that point in time.
Right.
So we're 2019.
Okay, let's stop there. So 2019, what you have is a typical, emerging advisor conundrum. Like you're just happy to be independent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you need to make a living. You know what I mean? And you need to, serve people to get the repetitions in. Right. So there's no shame in that moment. If you're an advisor that is in that moment, that is a natural part of the process, right? You grow from that. Okay, where did you go next?
And look, and this is something. Okay, this is just. We'll get back on the thing, but I had this thing today when I was doing some meditation. It talked about thanking yourself, writing a personal thank me letter. Thank yourself, and I had to thank myself for going through what I went through because it led me to where we got. And so I'll say that to the advisors as you're saying that. First of all, you're in the business, you're starting your firm, or you already have your firm and you're growing. Thank yourself. Sit back and really take some time to be able to say, I thank me for taking this opportunity to do it. And that's okay. Don't feel bad about doing that, but I think you need to. So when we get to there in 2019, like you said, we're just happy to be there. So the first year, we didn't get very many clients. We're happy for every one of them. Happy for every one of them. Some of them still with me now. We go to 2020 and then we have a storm. Right, we have the pandemic happen. Good for me though, we started the podcast. Right, so I've had my podcast, so I got 6 months of content that's out there, and people are at home with nothing to do. So now they start watching, and so now the next problem presents itself. Now having people come in, but we have no qualifications for people. Like they coming in, just anybody just coming in. And I'm like, so I might have someone that's really qualified. I have someone that's really not qualified. I have someone that I don't even know what I'm going to do for this person.
You had a good pandemic, bro.
Yeah.
But
it was good.
Keep going.
It was good.
There's a lot of clients you had in that year, I remember.
So now, and this is exactly why I got to the writing the business, because we're just taking anything. Okay, we got this, and then so we did the first year, and then I had to change how I did my fees after the first year. So I had to change that.
So that's 2021.
2021.
Okay, so this is an issue that I feel like every advisor comes to. And Johannes was on the podcast earlier and he talked about building in qualifications. This is the same problem here, right? You don't know who you're serving. You're happy to be here. You're trying to get the repetitions because that gives you the experience to do this, to communicate, right? To be able to tap into what people are really trying to get out in their financial lives, but their financial lives is connected to their, personal lives, right? So you're doing that. The storm happens. If you had a microphone and a camera in a pandemic, you probably got rich. Because, everyone was at home watching, consuming, and trying to navigate this storm called the pandemic, right? You had a great pandemic year, but when you look back on the roster, many of these people don't really fit the qualifications of a client that might fit your ICP, right? All right, tell me what you do next.
So now I'm sitting here and you were involved in this heavily. So now we're sitting here, you hearing me complain every time because I'm trying to get, I'm giving great advice, I feel. And the people just aren't doing the things that we need to do in a timely manner. So it's really not it's not impacting their plan the way that it can, but it's not happening as fast as I think it should happen. And I don't want them to feel like I'm not doing the work for them. So I feel like I'm in this fight all the time with the client, trying to get them to do what we talked about doing, and then they're not doing it. And then so, as you remember, I'm complaining to you about this, like, God, I don't know why they're not doing it. Some of them are doing it, some of them aren't. And so now I'm like, okay, well, randomly I get, one of my clients refers me to their parents. And so now I'm starting to do their retirement planning. And I'm like, okay, so I ask them to do this and they do it. And I ask them to get this stuff done for me. And I ask them to come to the meeting prepared and bring this and bring that. And we go through this and I'm starting to go through this process. And that happened one time. And then once they referred me to someone else. So now I got 2 new retirement clients and I'm starting to work with this one and they did the same thing. And I was like, you mean that people will do what you ask them to do when you ask them to do it? If they're motivated enough, and it's someone that I do good work for. Right. And so we started to make the change, and then this was the hardest thing. And I'll say this to any advisor that finds themselves in this place. Now I have 2 different books of business that I'm building, right? Now I have my retirement planning book, and then I have my young professional, young families, young everybody, young anything in this side. And what's happening now, I have to make a decision because I have basically 2 different businesses. What am I going to do? And I had to make a tough decision. And the decision was to spend more time with the people that I enjoyed spending more time with. And I went into the retirement piece when I did that. And when I did that, I had to let go of some revenue.
Yeah.
I had to break the news to some clients that, I don't feel like I can do the best work for you. And being honest with the client, just giving them, full disclosure, like I just don't feel like I'm doing the best work. I think that, this, that. And we offboarded the clients. It took me about 6 to 8 months to offboard all those clients because some of them were, in different phases of everything. And it was the most stressful, scary, mind-blowing thing that I ever did because I'm actually telling. So look at the switch from you have a post, can you fog a mirror, to I don't know if you're a good fit and they're already paying me.
Right.
And it's one of those things that now I feel like when that was happening, I had finally turned, and there's 2 different things that you have to be when you're an advisor, right? You have to be an advisor and you have to be a business owner. And I feel like I was making business owner decisions at that point in time instead of making just advisor decisions about having people. That's one of the toughest things that I feel advisors have to make that decision and make that distinction about who you are and what hats you wear inside of your own firm.
Yeah. That's the hardest thing to do. People are usually good practitioners and then have to learn to be good business owners. You know what I mean? But once you make that business decision, you have to follow it up with business actions, right? And I think that's what you did. So
Absolutely.
Good on you.
Absolutely.
So what timestamp is this? Just so for the people that are watching or listening, so they can follow along.
Yeah, we're at the end of and there was one client that broke the back, but it was about the end of 22. It was the end of 22, starting 23. And that's when we start. Yeah, 23 is when we got started, and that's when we started to transition those last clients off of what we were doing and started bringing in more retirement clients. So that by the time we get to 24, all that's over, and then now we're just doing the stuff. So when we started about halfway through 24, I say about July of 24, that's when the full transition. We're just doing retirement, started a new podcast, did all this stuff, and just went in on retirement planning. And it was the scariest thing I ever did, right? Going from a place, and I just I can't stress this enough, going from a place where you have revenue coming in, which is fine, that we built, but making the business decision that we are going to move away from what we're doing to go here, because right now immediately it's going to hurt. It's going to, it's going to hurt. We'll just rip the Band-Aid off and get moving from there. And so once we did that, I mean, life, every time we talk now, you're like, how you doing, man? I said, life is good. You know what I mean? I think it's just a progression. As an advisor, you're going to make progressions along your career, right? And undoubtedly you are going to change, right? As you know, you may be single when you first start, and then you're going to get married. And then you get married, then you might have children. And then after you have children, the children are going to grow up, and then they're going to want to be involved. And all this time, you as an advisor and as a business owner is going to evolve. And the needs that you have and the things that you do are going to evolve. Yeah. So I think that it's only natural that your business evolves, and it's okay that your business evolves. And that's something that I think, if you're honest with yourself, if you're that advisor watching, if you're honest with yourself, you already know you need to make a move. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? The move is imminent. And the longer you delay, because I delayed it for a little while. Also, we talked about that. And I was like, I don't know. And once I made the decision, I think it was the scariest, best decision I ever made.
I would argue that any good decision likely is scary. You know what I mean? If the decision is too easy for you to make, probably not the right one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, true.
It doesn't push you outside of your comfort zone. It doesn't push your boundaries. If you're not pushing your boundaries, there's no growth that can come from that particular decision. Now, you switched up your clientele. You kind of took us through the journey of growth. But along the way, like, how were you getting the clients? Because that's a big part of, your experiments in marketing.
Yes.
Was it always podcasting? Were you doing anything else? Was it referrals? You mentioned that a bit. Yeah. And how did that meaningfully impact your business? I believe at one point you were growing 25, 30% per year. So give us the activity that led to the discovery of your ICP and finding these people.
Yeah, you know what? The biggest growth, and I'm just thinking about it as you said. The biggest growth came from the podcast. Even though we did the social media, even though we did Instagram, we did all the social media platforms. The biggest growth came from my podcast, and so that's back to like we're talking about the marketing and all that. And I'm saying that's back to that had to even be scary because I stopped doing that podcast, understanding that the podcast would work. I needed to change the podcast so I could change the marketing so I could get to the people that I wanted to talk to.
Yep.
And so as I started to do that, quite frankly, a lot of my clients would see my content and they would send it to people. Right. And so they'd say, oh, you need to talk to my friend. And so they would send it to someone. And so the referral business went very, very well as I was transitioning the podcast, because you remember I stopped doing that one. And so a lot of the stuff came from referrals. A few came in from social media. Like I had like leads from Facebook. I got some leads from Instagram. But what I noticed was the people that came to my website were better leads than what I was getting that were coming from the social media platform. So trying to figure out in my ecosystem where I wanted people to start to enter into my funnel, right? And so if they were starting on social media and TikTok Instagram was a big one for me. I used to do a lot of stuff on Instagram, but not a lot of stuff came from Instagram for me. I'm not saying that it doesn't work, it just didn't work for me that way. And so between the referrals, between the podcast, and between, just growth in the clients. Like I'd have clients that have, okay, I just came into some money, maybe someone passed away or whatnot. And that's what grew that's how I grew that first in 2024.
Yeah. So a lot of content, a lot of podcasting. I'm a fan of podcasting. So this is an extremely biased take. But Manish Kata said it the best. He said, I'm going to keep creating content and I'll see you at the next billion, right? I think if an advisor is trying to get intimate with their clients, get proximate with their clients, they have to create a way to speak directly to their clients and their pain points on a consistent basis. I mentioned, before the show started, I'm flying home, I got a date with my wife. You having a podcast, or me and you, for this matter, having a podcast was literally a date every Monday with my prospective clients. And they would listen, they would, monitor. And when the time was right, when that event happened, they would become clients. And it was the most interesting and, quite frankly, a miracle for me being that young, being able to acquire clients because I had some form of own content. So if you ask me, own content in 2026 is going to be huge. There are more and more advisors seemingly starting independent practices, right? But the differentiator is going to be like, how can you communicate value before the meeting even starts?
One thing I'd say about we're talking about the podcast, and I'd say this, like the podcast was, it's you have to show up and hit record. You can't have so the biggest thing that I would say, because a lot of advisors are doing podcasts or doing whatever, whatever marketing you do, you have to be consistent.
Yeah.
You have to be, I remember, and I can't stress this enough, the only reason the podcast worked is because every year I would sign myself up for a 52-week commitment to myself and to my audience. And that's when it was getting hard for me to make that commitment, I knew it was time to move on.
Yeah.
I couldn't, and I'll say it again, when it was hard for me to make that commitment to 52 weeks, because it was 52 weeks. It wasn't 5 clients.
Yeah.
It wasn't $10 million in assets. It was 52 weeks of shows that I'm committing to, regardless of the results. We're not doing this for results. I need the process. I got to do this. And there was a lot of times where, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, we did a show and it was 100,000 downloads. That wasn't what happened. That ain't what happened. I promise you that's not what happened. And so the commitment is huge. You have to commit to yourself. You have to commit to your audience. And you have to commit to that content. You just have to do it. And I just wanted to make sure I said that before we got off, because I think a lot of advisors, I hear it all the time, and I'm sure you hear it too. I have a podcast. Well, how long you been doing it? I'm doing it, once a month. I'm like, that ain't enough. People need to hear from you more. If you're going to take someone from a person that doesn't know you to trusting you to buying a service from you, they're going to need to hear from you more than once a month.
Yeah. Unless you're Ritholtz or something.
You know what I mean? So I think that that's advice, and I think the best thing that happened to me when I started the podcast is I didn't know what I didn't know. I just know I said I'm gonna do it for 52 weeks. I wasn't looking at analytics like I do now. I wasn't doing all that stuff, but I just knew that That's the biggest thing. And if you can commit to an activity, right, that's what we're committing to. You commit to the activity, the results will come. You just have to be ready for them. And when they did come, I wasn't even, it was tough to.
You were your bottleneck.
The bottleneck. The bottleneck, right? So once I had that, like, and I've said it before, business owners and advisors don't die from starvation. It's usually indigestion because they can't get people through the process. And so once you can't get them through, it makes it very, very difficult and discouraging because it feels like you're doing something wrong because you can't help everybody. But this is back to your process, right? If we have a better process framework, if you will, it's going to make your life easier, and it will always keep you in the driver's seat, and you won't be along for a ride.
Yeah, that's a gem right there. You talked about commitment, and to wrap up, I want you to tell advisors that may be watching this right now. It's the end of the year. They're wrapping up all their client service items, and they're thinking about what they're going to commit to next year, right? What are some things they should be thinking about? You can speak to them directly on the camera.
Yeah, absolutely. I think some of the things that I would be thinking about is how much time can I realistically commit to this activity? Not something that sounds good, not something that's going to make me feel good, not something that's going to look good on a board. What can I actually do? And then how much time is that activity going to take? If I'm going to do this podcast, if I'm going to do this marketing idea, how much time is it going to take me, and how much of my time can I commit to doing it? Right? Once you have that, then you can start to kind of back into how much the work is going to take to get in. Because it's not just hit record and I just say something and then people are just going to start beating down your door to come and work with you. It's going to be focused time, carving out that time, because I think that's so important for you to make the time to do the work. And then check it. And what do I mean by check it? At the end of the month, when you're done doing your thing, I like to do it weekly because the month gets a little too long. But at the end of every week, the things that you should be doing is looking back at where you spent your time. Yeah. Apple does a great thing on your phone, right? And I used to get mad at Apple for sending me this because they tell me what apps I spend my most time on when I'm doing all this. And if you look at that and you can look at those apps and you've been spending more time on those apps than you've been spending working, don't get mad because you're not getting clients. Right? So track your time. I think where you spend your time, you hear this all the time, like about where, show me your calendar, show me your bank account, tell me where you spend your time. Well, show me your calendar and how much time you spent doing the activities that you think are going to give you business. And if you haven't spent the time doing them, don't expect the business just to show up.
Or you get out what you put in, and you have to commit to the activity. You got to commit to the process, and the results will come, right?
Yes, they will. Every time. It's a tried and true equation.
Tried and true equation from a tried and true advisor. Emlyn, I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. It won't be the last time, and always a pleasure seeing you here in LA.
Man, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be up here. Always a good time kicking it with my boy.
Thanks to you, advisors. We'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to The Advisor Journey by Altruist. Brokerage-related products and services are provided by Altruist Financial LLC, a member of FINRA/SIPC. Results may vary. Altruist and its affiliates do not provide tax or legal advice.